Once everyone who would be attending this meeting of the inner circle of the Habsburg court in the Netherlands had arrived, King Fernando invited them to sit with a gesture of his hand. Most of them had already planted themselves on their chairs before he'd even completed the gesture. The young monarch could be a stickler for formality on some occasions, but meetings with his closest advisers were held as casually as could be expected. Understanding, of course, that, as could be expected, was measured by the care and caution of Europe's most powerful and long-lasting dynasty. The House of Habsburg had begun its rise 6 centuries earlier, founded by an obscure Swabian count named Radbot of Klettgau. He built his castle in a northerly portion of what would later become Switzerland, and named it Habsburg, which eventually became the name of the dynasty itself. The origins of the name are unclear. The most commonly held belief was that the count named it after a hawk, Habicht, in German, which he spotted resting on one of the walls. The Habsburgs did not rise as a result of quick and dramatic conquests. This was not a family with the perspective and temperament of Philip II of Macedon and his son Alexander the Great. Their preferred methods of advancement were, first and foremost, the making of advantageous marriages, combined with astute political alliances and obtaining positions for the family in the high ranks of the Catholic Church. A bit over 2 centuries after Count Radbot's death, the Habsburgs took their first major step toward European royal preeminence when Count Rudolf IV was elected the King of the Romans on October 1, 1273. The man who held the title was generally considered the future head of the Holy Roman Empire, although that depended on the approval of the Pope. But the initial period was a shaky one for the Habsburgs. They were not able to retain the position and spent the 14th and first part of the 15th century engaged in more or less constant quarrels and maneuvers with other prominent dynasties on the continent. Withal, they continued to progress, preferably with their tried and trusted methods of marital, political, and ecclesiastical alliances. And if they were not especially adept in the use of military methods, they weren't all that bad at it either. A coalition led by Rudolf defeated King Ottokar of Bohemia at the Battle of the Marsfeld on August 26, 1278. One of the outcomes of that battle was that the Habsburgs took possession of the duchies of Austria and Styria. In the centuries that followed, those duchies became the heart of Habsburg power and remained so until the final collapse of the dynasty in 1918, at the end of the First World War. On March 19, 1452, Pope Nicholas V crowned Frederick III as the Holy Roman Emperor. The Habsburgs would retain that title in an unbroken line for the next 3 centuries, and reached the height of their power with the reign of Emperor Charles V in the first half of the 16th century. He was the single most powerful man in Europe since Charlemagne. After his death, the Habsburg dynasty split into 2 branches, the Austrian and the Spanish. Both of them remained among the major dynasties of Europe and usually cooperated with each other. The Austrian branch of the dynasty retained the title of Holy Roman Emperor. Or rather, would have retained the title, but that was in another universe. In this one, created by the Ring of Fire and the arrival of the West Virginia town of Grantville in the year 1631, history had been changed. Quite drastically, in the summer of 1634, Philip IV's younger brother, Fernando, known then as the Cardinal Infante, succeeded in reconquering most of the Netherlands for Spain, with only 2 small provinces and the great city of Amsterdam holding out against him in the siege that made Gretchen Richter famous across Europe, or notorious, depending on how you looked at it. Fernando then made a settlement with the Protestant Prince of Orange, Frederick Hendrik, which reunited the Low Countries. He gave himself the title of king in the Netherlands and shortly thereafter married his cousin, Maria Anna, an Archduchess of Austria.